Thank you for joining Leadership Rediscovered, a podcast devoted to all things leadership. I'm Laura Siebold, founder and president of Shine Consulting, and each week I interview different leaders from different industries and different walks of life to talk about their unique definition of leadership. And today I am so thrilled to be talking to my friend, Dr. Shannon Smith, and we got connected through Elise Smith, no relation, right? From the Women's Warrior Summit, amongst other things. And so grateful to know you and so grateful that you took time to come on the show today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so glad we connected and we'll continue to connect. I'm positive.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm excited. Okay. So I was looking at your bio and I pulled this line out that I absolutely loved. I think it's maybe the first sentence, but it says, Dr. Shannon Smith, MD, is a dedicated physician who has focused her career on unraveling the challenges affecting children's mental and physical well-being in today's world of abundance, which that's a huge statement right there. You are a leadership strategist, a physician, a communication coach, among other things, and speaker, because you've been doing a lot of speaking gigs right now. And you have such an interesting journey. So can you just tell us your story? You can take it from a leadership perspective or just in general. Take us on your journey.
Well, thank you. And again, so excited just to be here with you. We have so many similar beliefs from that truly we are each in this together and that each of us have such incredible talent and value. And so I'll describe my leadership journey from the perspective of back in the day, I believed that a leader was cutting edge, in charge. That's what it is. And I still believe that a leader is pushing forward, but ultimately we're only in charge of ourselves. And so I became a doctor for that same old reason. I wanted to help people. Like I truly just wanted, we see so much suffering in the world. We see so much pain. And you were talking to Nikki Thomas in a previous podcast, and you kind of said something along the lines, if you don't see it, you can't be it.
Yes.
And I saw doctors. I didn't see, there was no one in my home. My home was, my mom was a college professor, is a college professor, and my dad is an entrepreneur, has his own business. And so that's what I kind of saw. But I saw physicians in the community and thought maybe that's how I can help with so much suffering that I saw in the world. And grateful I became a doctor, grateful I got to learn, really just, it's almost hard when you look back on your life and you're like, I spent almost 20 years in rooms with families allowing me to be a part of their journey and learn from them. And that's been beautiful. And I think we do what we do until we know better. And then once we find that spark, and that's how I felt. I felt like I was seeing a lot of depressed, a lot of anxious, a lot of suicidal kids and families just struggling. And I was a pediatrician in Huntington during the heroin overdose or the heroin epidemic, opioid epidemic. It was crushing. It was absolutely devastating.
And hard to watch from a physician and parent perspective too, I'm sure.
100%, because it's all of us. Like we're not isolated. I think that understanding of community is lost on a lot of us because of our modern world and growing and being separate and isolated in your own home. And I think one of the things I love about West Virginia and the area I'm in is that we're in these smaller communities where you can see the impact more directly. But we have to take care of each other. There's no other way. It's, you can try to save yourself all you want, but we are all in this. And so really looking around and going, oh my gosh, like how can we be doing this better? And I would say if I look at my values, one of them is efficiency. I cannot stand inefficiency. Everywhere from in my home, when you come over, you'll find like my drawers are all labeled. Like I am not going to be a person who wastes 10 minutes looking for scissors. And because time is the ultimate currency. And I think a lot of us don't realize that's ultimately what money really is supposed to measure is our work over time. And so when I was seeing these kids struggling and I could see solutions and they couldn't be implemented, that's really when I decided I'm dedicating my life to this. I'm going to find solutions, be a part of the solution and get comfortable making mistakes, which was critical. That there's no other way to move forward. And so once I started finding solutions, like really turns out how we communicate, how we connect, is crucial to how we show up in the world. And started uncovering root causes, then I was like, oh my gosh, I have no understanding of business. And without business, like I used to be like, money's evil. And that's like saying a hammer is evil. Like money is just a tool. Like
Yes.
but we tend to say that. And instead of me being like, how do I use money
Yeah.
to add more value to the world?
For good versus
yes,
misuse.
100%. And so that's really where my journey, as I would say, I stepped into a new role, trying to figure out how to walk away from pediatrics to create more health in families is where I look back. It was a really scary time in my life. It was really hard. And one of my gifts is surrounding myself with incredible people like you. And I'm just so blessed to surround myself with just really great people. And that requires communication. And those are skills I did not have. Yeah. I grew up in a home that very much would be considered, a really solid middle class. We never worried that food wasn't going to be there. And so I thought that was normal.
Yep.
My parents.
Same upbringing.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, and most of us don't realize that everything is normal to whoever's in it.
Exactly.
And
it's your normal.
So it's your normal. And so I thought when you get in an argument with your spouse, of course you throw things. Of course you call names. Of course you demean. Mm-hmm. Isn't that how you communicate?
Right.
And somebody could look back and go, come on, how could you think that? Well, that's all I saw. And then I saw society looking at my parents and going, that's successful. Mm-hmm. So these two must be combined. And then part of what I discovered was how communicating in certain ways negatively impacts learning in our children's brains and adults. So my focus became, how do we communicate, reconnect? And I began working not with just children, but the whole family to change. And wow, like I feel like we're the ultimate student. You're on here studying leadership as a leader, and there's nobody done. And so often we act like, hey, where's the expert? It's like the expert better be the biggest student in any field they're in. And so even now, I'm just still continuously diving into how to communicate to light up certain parts of the brain versus others in order to show up as that inner leader and our best self. So that's the beginning. That's how I saw the problem, and then how I started transitioning over to my own company in order to help families.
Yeah. And your company's name is Own Your Focus, right?
Yes. So our company is Own Your Focus. We started out just working with families, but now we started with families. Now we work with companies, organizations, because those same communication tools that help families thrive, help any team thrive.
Yes. It's all relationships.
And what I love is when it's all relationships. Yes. I'm going to click off my camera here real fast, just because it will refocus there. It will get all blurry because I'm moving too much. But yeah, it's all relationships. And people don't realize that it's not you're good, you're bad. It's wait a second. Like, those are the coping skills you have. That's where you are. And in today's world, we are so reactionary to be like good, evil versus, let's simmer down. What are the root issues? And let's slow down and look at them. And we're going to find out we're a lot more similar. And I really believe the solutions to the world's massive problems are in front of us. It's just a matter of getting clear and implementing.
Yeah. And getting out of our own way, usually, I feel like, is one of the biggest challenges, right?
Absolutely. Because I want to point enemy. I want to be like, and that was one of the big things I found, is that we were solving problems wrong. And so a big part of my mission is, how do we solve problems more effectively? And it requires us to be leaders and show up. I would love to dive into our problem solving solution that I've been fortunate enough to work with governments. Governments have brought me in to help them break down problems, not because I have the answers, because I help them walk through how to break down massive problems.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're willing to share any of the process or tips or anything, like, we'll take it all. We'll take it all.
100%. So how I solve any problem is, one, start with the assumption that there's a miscommunication. Like just start with that assumption. Okay.
I love starting there.
Yeah. And then two, I'm actually going to pull it up for you because it
Awesome.
makes it 100 times easier to see. And it's so simple. It is, am I able to share? Let me see.
Maybe.
You might have to give me permission.
Can we give her permission to share? Justin, she's going to pull up something on the screen.
And it's going to seem so simple. It's essentially applying the scientific method to any problem, our lives, anything. And so let's see if we got it. Not yet. And if we can't, no big deal. I can just use my hands.
I think we're pulling it up right now. Yeah.
There we are. Okay. So simple. Are you ready?
Yes.
So whatever problem, and then we can run through an example is, what's your current situation? Just like full stop. Where are we? What are we struggling with? And get really, really clear. And a lot of us don't even know to look there. And then desired. So often we're like, I want something different, but we're not like, no, this is what I want. And then defining the problem, and there's usually numerous. And ultimately, we're looking for the 80-20. So I'm guessing you're familiar with the 80-20 principle, but for those of you who aren't, this is a scientific principle that can be applied to business and elsewhere. It's basically defining the 20% of the problem that's going to create 80% of the impact. In the world, we know that if you have pea plants, 20% of your plants produce 80% of the results of all the land mass. 20% of the land has 80% of the people. It's just how things work. And so often we tend to look for solutions that create 1%. And it's not like, oh, I'm not happy that there is an improvement. It's very much so, we're in some serious, we have massive obstacles coming at us as a species, and we've got to get faster. And then hypothesize solutions. And the crazier you get on the ideas, it actually helps trigger that part of your brain, and then test it in a measurable and time constrained way. And that really helps to break down any obstacle. And so I'll give you a personal example of how I use this. So I explained that I found this problem and I thought, how am I going to help children thrive? Like, I'm seeing that we're communicating ineffectively. I'm seeing that the way we're teaching kids in school isn't tapping into curiosity. And we're telling them don't fail, when the business world knows, like, you better fail. You better get really good at making mistakes and get excited for them.
And be curious.
Be curious, and don't go for the 100%. Go for the 20 that creates the 80. And so when I try to help kids find the 20% that creates the 80, they freeze. I freezed, or I froze. And so, because I didn't, I'm like, no, I need an A on this. And so there's so many things we're doing that are actually counterintuitive to how to truly solve problems. And so in my own life, when I really saw this was around 2009, that I was just like, I can't, what I'm doing isn't efficient enough. And so here I am juggling a 2-year-old. My marriage is falling apart because of my communication tools, my coping skills. Coping skills wasn't even a word I learned in med school. I learned that from my sister who was getting her PhD in psychology. And I was like, wait, what is that? So, so she helped me with so many people helped me during this time. After my divorce, I spent pretty much a year working on me. I had never been to therapy until I was getting a divorce. And I really think therapy can benefit everyone.
Big fan. Big fan.
I mean, get your therapist, get your coaches. I have a personal trainer for my body. Why would I not get something to hold up a mirror for my thoughts?
I know. In adults too, like, sorry, just to interrupt 1 minute, because I'm real passionate about this. I think about how much I spend on my child with private lessons for whatever he's got going on, right? Private baseball lessons, private strength and conditioning lessons, all of that. But yet we don't do that as adults for ourselves. We're not continuing to invest in ourselves. So anyway, keep going.
Oh, I think it's a great point. I think it's a great point in every way. And so I'll veer off that for a moment to follow along with you. Like, I have a coach that helps me with my talks. I have, and one of the things I do for the families I work with even my own, is I think therapy is so critical that I have a whole network of therapists that are on call for
That's
teenagers.
awesome. That's
Like
awesome.
that it's just we need each other. And being
Yes.
able to set it up in a usable, really healthy way is there. And that's
Yes.
why I'm at that point of we have a lot of solutions out there. And how do we
Absolutely.
implement?
Yeah.
So I spent, yes, a year in workshops, diving in books, like I'm
Oh my
sure like you,
goodness.
I'm an avid reader and it
Yes.
just never stops. I actually love learning so much more since I finished residency
Oh, I
than
bet. I bet.
ever, than
It's
ever
more
before.
voluntary. You get to read the things you want to read and learn about the things you want to learn about.
Exactly. So I this part of the story people always love. So I after a year of that, I knew I'd wanted a partner. I was hoping to be remarried. I was hoping for more children.
Yeah.
But there are all these things. I see this massive problem. I'm trying to raise my own daughter. I'm trying to stay healthy. I'm trying to take care of my house. And so own your focus came from like, you can't focus on it all. Like what, Shannon, what are you going to pick?
Ooh.
And
Ooh, yes.
and so I could have gone and got maybe a master's in business, an MBA or something like that. But like, I just knew that my ability to dive in deep enough, like I couldn't do it. So I decided I did want to find a husband. He was going to have to be great at business. So
I love this.
I got a spreadsheet because you only have so much time. So I got
right. You got to be efficient about it.
You got to be efficient. So I literally had a spreadsheet with the qualities, and I've since taught, it's the same system. It's just applied to different things, but I've coached many people on this sense. I got the qualities. I essentially created a funnel of whether people were, sharing people or whether I was meeting people online, which was brutal. And then like the steps, okay, we got to message a few times. Okay. Then we had an on-person call, and then we did a 1-hour date. And it was 4 or 5 years I dated. Laura, it was like my own MBA. I only dated businessmen all across the country and just made so many wonderful friends from it. And they weren't the right fit. It was so different than my pre-kid dating, because I really showed up with this. I know what I want. I know what I'm looking for. And there's no offense if it's not what you want. And a lot, some guys were like, oh my gosh, like I've never had someone that had this much clarity on what they wanted. So I knew
a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And then sometimes I would come home and be like, wrong quality, get that one off there, change that, I'm wrong. But that's that failing forward. And I got introduced to my husband. I had no intention of staying in the Huntington area. I really thought I would end up somewhere else in the country, wherever it took me. And my trainer introduced me to my now husband, and he had founded NECCO, which is one of the larger mental health and child advocacy groups. Perfect. And I met him, and we went on our date, and I think I gave him an hour and a half. So my sister was like, "Ooh, you must have liked him." And
she made an exception to the process.
When I gave a little. So on our third date, though, I told him, I'm like, "This is what I'm building." Because the first two, I want to just hear about you, like, and that's part of it. You're just really trying to hear them. And by the third date, I'm like, "This is what I'm building." And he was like, "I can help you build that." And today's our 10-year anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
That is awesome. I love that story though, because you're right. Like it's so funny to me. So I have friends who run a business together, and I had them on the podcast, and it was really funny because we talked about the fact that a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I could never run a business or I can never work with my spouse." And I'm like, but you are in a partnership with them. Like the rest of the time, just be aware if you wouldn't pick them for a business partner. Interesting that you selected them as a life partner.
You got it. But we're not taught that. Like I love to teach people that now, that is your business partner, whether you're running a true company or not. Like your home is a company. Stephen and I have financial meetings we actually have about 4 companies. So we sit down, we look at our house budget, we review that, we look at our farm, we look at he has a venture capital firm, and then we run through Own Your Focus. Own Your Focus is my baby, and he pretty much does everything. I have an amazing partner, but truthfully, I had to look in the mirror and go, Shannon, what skills don't you have to make this successful? And that type of honesty, like Stephen's never going to get on stage. When people ask him And Steven's just his own incredible, impressive person. He, for the foster care company, he created their electric health record, EHR, in the 90s. As a doctor, I did not have electric health records until like somewhere around 2010, something like that.
Yeah, that's, I feel like a fairly recent advancement.
Yes, so they literally have the oldest foster care mental health data in the world, and this is the guy I snagged as my business partner. And so he is just he has so many skills I don't, and that can be hard at times. And then I have to be like, we're all in this together. Like, keep gathering incredible people because we need it. So he's been able to help me build that. So that's with my personal life. I was able to define the problem, hypothesize different solutions, and then test for that 4 or 5 years. And then it looks the exact same, whether it's a kid struggling with mental health issues. What do we want? And a lot of times parents don't go, wait, what do I want?
So interesting.
Like, they don't go, wait, I'm hoping for a child who's 16 and comes and tells me when they have hard decisions. I want a child who is willing to come to me and say, I made this mistake. Or I want a 25-year-old that has confidence in who they are and might not be looking for the second husband because they knew what they were looking for the first time, which I got no regrets. This same system works for my blended family. And some people know this, but my first husband's wife, who is my daughter's, we call her bonus mom. She is a CEO for one of the organizations I work with. She and I are just, she has helped me create so much of this because we've had to have a lot of hard conversations.
Well,
you have to, it's constructive conflict. And most of us don't know how to have constructive conflict. And that's what I pretty much do with a living.
That's so amazing. Okay. I have like a million questions for you, but I'll try to focus. I can't ask them all. But when you think about that process of define, hypothesize, test, do you notice, are there patterns around common fail points for people where like maybe they don't do enough work on defining the actual problem? Like maybe they have a assumption of what the problem is and then they hypothesize and test from there, but it was not the actual problem. Or maybe they don't spend the time hypothesizing enough or testing enough. Do you notice any patterns there of where people sometimes have more of a struggle?
Yeah, so there's numerous weak points in it. One is the self-reflection. I think it's hard to do it yourself. Like for my own situation, I have to go to somebody to bounce these off of, to be like, what am I not seeing? Because how our brain work is very blinding. And that's why we need people that can give us feedback in a way that doesn't trigger the part of our brain that's an alarm system. You're not safe, you're not safe. And so that's critical. Another piece is most of us don't trust ourselves. Like, we don't trust ourselves in a lot of ways. And so therefore we get stuck not believing we can figure it out, instead of like, no, everyone can solve any problem with focus and persistence. So there's that piece. And then the last one's accountability. Most of us struggle with truly, hey, this is what I'm going to test. This is what I'm going to follow through. And then at the end, I'm going to assess the data and figure out how to restart. Whereas a lot of us get caught in these, I'm a failure, I'm not enough, look at me, I couldn't have figured it out. And so I would say those are the 3 weakest points of the system, along with slowing down. If you don't slow down to do this, it won't get done. If you're just like, too bad, I'm going to fix the first thing and go, your just probability of solving it as effectively as you can is dramatically reduced.
Yeah, especially if you're not even solving the real problem, right?
And the root is something I'm constantly going after. I'm just superficial. Solving problems superficially does not interest me. And I'm continually, Stephen and I will sometimes joke when I get stressed at answers I find. He's like, stop it. We're archaeologists. Like, we just got to keep looking. And he just brings such peace to my mind, because if we are afraid, it actually lights up a part of our brain that's less likely to be able to solve problems. And most of us don't know that. So being out of fear and being in curiosity actually makes your brain more useful.
Yes. Oh, love that. And that actually takes me another question I was going to ask you, because I'm so impressed by your ability to pivot from medicine to what you're doing now. And there's so much of me that wonders, were you met with a lot of resistance from other people as well as internally? Like, my gosh, I mean, you spent a zillion years in school, right? And this is what you invested in. And I'm sure that there are many people that would have been like, well, Shannon, just you got to stay in it. This is what you wanted to do. And you went through medical school and residency and all of that. So you just have to stick with it, regardless of how you feel about it. So I would love to just spend just a few moments there of just internal resistance or external resistance or both, because that was a huge shift that you made.
It was a huge shift. So a couple things. So one, it was very strategic. Like it was over a 5 year, it was weaning down on those hours, checking that balance, really failing forward towards success to see. So that's one.
Yeah.
Then two, the fear. I used to tell people I didn't think I was smart enough to go into business, so I became a doctor. And like that always,
Wow.
becoming a doctor is so much memorization. And I was a great memorizer. My mom's a college professor. So and that's a huge issue I have with both the medical system and with the education system, in that we're not taught to think deeply, to go, okay, who funded this study? Okay, well, what's the opposite studies on this? Okay, when they measure the risk benefit ratios, and I know I didn't know enough about business to understand how any of that was part of the equation. So there was really big fear that I wasn't, and I didn't have the knowledge and the background. So it really became a matter of trusting my ability to obtain it and to find people who could help me. So that was one. Two, of course, everybody is naysaying. Your family loves you. They're scared. Your friends want you still in the office working with them. Your patients, you've pretty much raised them since they were born. But most of the people could see my passion, that like I wasn't gonna stop, that I was gonna find answers and find ways to get it to people more effectively, more efficiently, to bring out that inner leader in all of us to solve these massive issues that are continuing to come at us. But the internal, really bad. And I will share the one person that hit me the biggest with their naysayer. Are you ready? My daughter, she looked at me. She's now 16. So she was younger, but she just said, she came in one day. I don't know if she'd overheard somebody or something, but she came in and said, who quits being a doctor to go try something? This is never going to work. And I just remember like just breathing and just breathing. And because that's your fear as a single parent, is like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for us. Like I see that entrepreneurialism is the future. Brad Smith, Marshall CEO, Intuit, or Marshall president, CEO for Intuit, just love him and his brain. He says the majority of jobs are coming from being an entrepreneur. And I think that most of us can measure how much we make by how much money, but we forget to measure it in the skills that we're gaining for what's coming at us.
Yes. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think the fear topic is very interesting. And I like to go there with people because nobody likes to talk about fear. But honestly, to me, that is what holds us back from so many things. And then when you think about regrets later in life, it's a lot of times, oh, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done that. It's not, typically people don't regret the things they did do. They regret the things they didn't do. And if you peel back, why didn't they do it? It's because typically fear got in the way of actually doing it. So, I mean, to be able to overcome that and still take action and move forward is huge. And I think there are a lot of people out there that want to be entrepreneurs, but are afraid, or want to make a career pivot, but are afraid. I think a lot of times, I mean, you talking about marital relationship, but honestly, it's the same thing. I think the older we get, and the more we start to learn about ourselves and others, and learn different ways of doing things, we get more clarity about who we really are and what we really want. And that happens a lot in the career space as well, where people get to a point, they've been doing something maybe 15, 20 years, and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't even know what I want to do. I just know I don't want to do this, but oh my gosh, I can't start over now. How could I start over now? I've invested all of this time and energy, and I've got all these bills to pay, and yada, yada, yada. And I can't start over now. I can't do this now. But you're a beautiful example of what can happen if you are willing to try.
Yeah, because they're not starting over. And so, whoever's out there, and if you're listening to this, you're not starting over. All those skills, those mini skills you don't even see. It could be your ability to type fast, your ability to connect with people, your understanding of accounts receivable. I don't know. All those little things will add in a way that you never saw coming.
Yeah.
And there's, things that I learned from patients that I would have been like, I had no idea that was going to help me out today. And it just does. And that's really trusting the world and learning to slow down and listen to yourself. And that was really scary for me because, again, I think we go to school, let me tell you, and you're not going, no, seriously, what am I actually curious about?
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, I mean, it just kind of brings everything full circle from the perspective of you wanted to help people in your original career selection, career choice, and you are helping people in what you're doing right now. So that actually didn't change for you. You're just doing it in a different way.
You got it. And that's exactly how I see it. It's how can I do it more efficiently? And like the way, like, I love studying technology. I love studying future technologies, what's coming at us. And I had the privilege of getting to hang out in Los Angeles during the internet boom and bust. And I was in med school, and I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And I was only spending my summers pretty much partying out there, but like getting to learn and hear these people talk. And that wasn't, I grew up in Ohio, so that wasn't what I saw. And that has shown up in my life over and over. Now that I dive into exponential technologies, from nanotechnology to AI to blockchain. And so again, how those come together when I show up in an organization or in a family ends up being in a way you wouldn't expect, because a lot of times, whether it's adults or children struggling without hope for the future, I can show them there is so much hope if we own our focus and really become strategic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay. Talk to me about your thoughts on leadership, because I want to hear, based on all of the experiences that you've had, I would just love to hear your definition of leadership, how you see yourself showing up as a leader, and then we'll get into where you're going with your leadership, because I want to talk about that too.
Yes. Okay. And I love that you want to go there. So, okay. So first, my absolute favorite definition of a leader is from John Quincy Adams. And it is, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader.
I love it.
Yes, I love that definition. We all are. But then there's really two other pieces of leadership that I think are critical. And one is curiosity. Again, we tend to see leaders as people pushing forward with blinders. You've got to be curious. You got to be curious about what's going on with your team, where the holes are, what the root cause is. And then the other one is strategic action. Without action, we can sit around and wish the world was better all we want, but without taking focused strategic action, we're not moving forward. What gets measured gets managed. And that is something that I think is a struggle for most of us, but we get to hold each other accountable and do that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, that's good. Very, very good. And then how about you as a leader? How would you describe yourself as a leader? How you bring that definition to life?
Okay, so fumbling it forward in many ways is my leadership. Is truly that piece of my leadership is seeing my weaknesses. So I can put people around me that are an incredible sources of information. So I have a lot of people that bring me the research, help summarize it. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm very much studying. I'll go through trauma. One of the main root causes I have found that's impacting our families is the medical definition of trauma. Okay.
Ooh. Okay. Say more about this, because I'm very interested in this.
And anyone out there hearing, please remove your thoughts of just like a car wreck or horrible incident. Remove that. Okay. And instead think of it as not what happened to you. It's actually what happened inside of you as a result of feeling unsafe or that you didn't belong. It's literally a neuron wiring in your brain telling you that person is not safe. And we know going forward, we have to connect. We went from tribes of 200 to now a tribe of 8 billion. And our challenge to figure out how to work together is huge. And so
fit in, right? Because we're still trying to fit in.
No doubt, no doubt. And so we have all these human biases in our brain, and studying the psychology of why we do what we do. And again, it's so easy to look and be like, they're evil. Look what they did, instead of, y'all, the fact that we're here, that we're doing as good as we are, let's own that and then figure out how to move forward strategically. So once I got to trauma, when I found that medical definition of trauma, it explained so much. It explained why a kid who's hungry can't learn in school. And yet we're looking at them, calling them stupid, which isn't a thing. I deeply believe it's not if you're smart, it's how you're smart. And these are the greatest computers in the world. And we're going to put them down, or we're going to tell this, you're the bottom, you're the top. Like we are each brilliant. So once I learned that, then I started looking for, again, it's not the only answer, but it's 80-20. That's a huge piece. And now I'm looking for root causes to this trauma. And one of those root causes is money, is the financial system of how stress impacts our families. So I am constantly studying. Like 10 years ago, I didn't even understand what money was. Like all I was good at was saving. Like any money I had, I was like, stuff it under my bed, basically.
Oh, I'm good at spending.
Right? Yeah.
Wish I was good at saving, Shannon.
I was good at that piece too. My fear, so fear can be bad sometimes. My fear of being that single mom was the only thing that helped me hang on to that piece. But I didn't know what to do with it. Like I didn't actually understand what money represented. I didn't understand how inflation impacted any of that. And so understanding now that inflation is a really big deal in the debasement of our currency. I think anybody who's been going to the grocery store starts to understand that. Since 2020, 80% of the US dollars in circulation have been created. Like when you stop and you're like, wait a second, what's happening? It's a massive deal. And we don't see that big because it impacts others around us that are in other countries and things like that much more. And so when I'm trying to study as the dollar continues to be debased and inflated, what's that look like? So I my husband and I, we walk in the morning almost every morning, and we have these conversations, and then we usually hit the hot tub in the evening and have them. And so one night I asked him, like, what does it look like? Help me understand what a day-to-day life looks like. And so he goes out, he reads 3 books, he finds one that makes the most sense, and he hands me that book. And he's like, here is a fiction book on what is the most solid one I found on explaining what society can look like as the dollar continues down this path. And so it's constantly understanding that it is required for our communities to become more close-knit, to start finding ways to have healthy local food, to be taking care of each of us, and be cultivating the inner leaders. So for example, I work with a school. I used to go and speak at different schools, and I'll still do that intermittently. Yeah. But there's one school that allowed me to come in and immerse. I changed the way the board communicates with the leadership. We've changed the way leadership communicates with the teachers. The students, we are teaching them communication and coaching skills, giving them an anonymous platform to come back and report to us.
That's amazing.
Things like shame and blame, because one of those big tools I learned as a pediatrician is shame and blame actually reduces our ability to learn. And therefore, but we don't see that in the short term. Just somebody yesterday on one of my Facebook posts actually wrote, we should beat children more. They wrote that. And like, I just asked a few questions. I didn't get very far, but that's the belief. And we do know it helps in the short term. If you beat somebody, they're probably not going to do that behavior in the next 5 minutes.
I'm not going to do that again. Yeah.
Correct. But not over the long term. The truth is, there are so many studies that have shown over the long term, your brain actually learns the opposite. And so I can blame those generations before, or I can say, oh my gosh, they did the best they could as they were running from war-torn countries, and they got us here. And now it's our job to change the way we communicate, to bring us all leaders and more strategic.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Okay. I could talk to you for so long, but I know we don't have for all day. But tell me, so I'm like, I can see your shirt a little bit, but show us what your shirt says. Fix the money, fix the world. So you were talking about, which is fascinating to me, the money piece, with being the root cause, because it's interesting. I remember growing up, again, we always had enough. We didn't have extra, but we had enough. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I realized I could see how my dad, because my mom stayed home with us and my dad worked as an engineer. And so the older I got, the more I started to see into, I think, the pressure that he felt to provide for the family. It was also a value for him that he didn't want to move the family. For whatever reason, he was concerned that that would cause us some kind of pain or discomfort, and he was not interested in moving the family. So he was always, I could tell, very focused on trying to make sure that we had enough, that we were well taken care of, that we weren't going to be in a situation where we were out on the street or have to move, because I think that was something that was really important to him. So, I mean, I did grow up seeing the level of responsibility, and I think he tried really hard to hide that that was a stressor for him. But fast forward to what we are going through right now with inflation and everything else, it is a much more openly talked about stress point for people. And I can't even imagine the impact that it's now having on other relationships, other aspects of people's life. So I'd love to hear where you're going with all of this, because I think it's exciting.
Yeah, so I think there's so much shame around money. And I think specifically for men, I think that men feel this massive weight on their shoulders when we need to be talking about this more. We need to be talking about, early 1970s, your ability to save, because that's the whole point of savings, is that, so money is a ledger, basically ones and zeros in a computer that is measuring work over time. That is all it is. For anyone that is missing that. Yes. And so therefore, the work I did 7 years ago, my hope is I can put it in whatever savings, I use, and that it's going to go up. Okay. We don't have that anymore, because if I might put it in and say I found 5% savings or something, I don't know, but inflation is, depending on how you measure it, I think coffee was up 35% this quarter. Okay. But that was immediately removed from our normal basket of goods that the government is telling us, hey, okay, look, that's what, here's actually inflation. So we don't, once the dollar came off the gold standard, it was already happening before that, but no longer is the dollar in any way attached to gold. Mm-hmm. Therefore, our government is continuing to take out loans on the future work that we all do. Mm-hmm. And that is how it pins it on everyone else. Well, it's not going to work. When you go back and study economies over the past 1,000 years, you see that actually this happened in some way or another to every currency, because that's all the dollar is. The dollar is a currency of many. Yes. And so that ledger is being continually tainted. And so families don't have a way to save. If you take that $100, you put it in your bank account, and then what happens as far as borrowing and printing, your savings is now cut in half. And I think a lot of people are sitting there going, gosh, why am I so bad at money? Instead of understanding, no, that's the system. And we currently have, our banking system actually started out decentralized. You had all these different banks all over the country, and they were able to kind of keep check on each other, because it's not a monopoly. And in, I think it was around 1912 is when the Federal Reserve was created. Basically, the top bankers in the world kind of came together and said, okay, we're the ones making a decision. And since that happened, it's like kind of, and again, we are where we are today. You and I are on electric, right? So what they've done got us here. Right. But then there's a point where system doesn't have transparency, and we don't have a way out. And I think now they're in a situation where they're like, we're doing the best we can. They want, the Federal Reserve has said, we want inflation around 2%, but they can't, there's no tool to get there because of where we are. And so it's, what other sources are there? What other options for our assets are out there. And my husband introduced me. So my husband just sits around and studies technology. It's so fun. And he introduced me to Bitcoin. I think it was 8 years ago now. And I stayed awake for days studying it. Like it, with my knowledge of how the internet worked and how those companies worked, I remember thinking back then, nobody would buy shoes off the internet, please, you know, and then seeing like what it did and understanding the adaptability. Essentially, our financial system is not technologically up to date. If it was, you would be able to really follow the money and see where it's going. It would dramatically reduce corruption. It would be able to help us solve problems much more efficiently. And so Bitcoin, I only think of it as a ledger, just like money, of ones and zeros, that there's a limited finite amount. It requires energy to create. So in many ways, just like digging gold takes energy to create, this is a computer program allowing that to be created. And it has that transparency that everyone can see. No one owns it. It is a piece of technology, just like a computer, just like anything else. And when you look at it, and once people go down that road, they're like, oh, this makes so much more sense. It will never get rid of the dollar or the yen or all these other things. It will be a base for the financial system in order to hedge their bets. So when companies bring my husband in to ask them how to hedge, it's just a piece. And the more you understand this technology, the more you choose how you want to hedge your bets, because we all need a diversified portfolio.
Yeah, that's amazing. What kind of, and are you willing to share where you're traveling to? Because we were talking about this before we went online, or to record truly, but I would love to hear, because it's just, I love how passionate you are about the things that you focus on, and you go all in. And so tell us where you're going if you're willing to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very soon we are headed to El Salvador. That was the first country to make Bitcoin their national tender. Did I say that right? Their national currency. And so we're going to go down, we're going to check out how Bitcoin is being used in their country. We're going to speak with officials and vendors to see what that looks like, because I really believe that when we're able to have financial autonomy as individuals, that creates that, removing a lot of that fear so that we can move forward. You know, you saw in Canada when there were questions about the vaccine and saying, wait, let's look at this. They froze people's bank accounts. That's freedom of speech. Money is just a form of us speaking about our time, our work over time. And so I want to dive in. I want to find the holes. I'm not here to be right. I am here to keep finding. Elon Musk says, I always assume I'm a little wrong, and my goal is to be less wrong. And so
I love that. Not to be right, but just to be less wrong.
Yeah. So I'm very excited. We're going to go down there. We're going to check it out. We're going to see where are the holes, where can it be improved, and see what interesting conversations I can get into. Cause like you, it's just curiosity. It's like, let me find where we're going and dive in. But to solve the world's problems, we have got to have open heart communication. We have got to have aligned incentives, and we have to have transparency of information, which in so many ways we don't, but we are really close. And when we quit looking for enemies and we start looking for answers, we can do this.
Oh, so good. Okay. So I feel like you are such a good example of leadership, of seeing problems and trying to help become part of the solution, or help figure out what the solution is. And I would just like to close with thoughts that you have, or advice that you would give people who are listening, of how they can step up as leaders, how they can really use all of the strengths and gifts that they have, just like you're doing right now, to say, let me go after this problem, or let me go chase this down. Let me go try to make a difference, because I think there's so much opportunity for everyone to be a leader.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So if somebody is sitting there, and I meet so many people that are like, I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Understand, that's all you need. If you want to make a difference, it all starts there. And that difference might change, or how you get there might change, but it's starting. And so the first thing is just saying you want to make a difference. Then you can start putting yourself around people to help understand more how. Ask questions. People want to help you. Anybody can message me. I might not get back with you that day. I'll get back with you. Like, there is no one that I don't want to see out there thriving, because I deeply believe the better they do, the better I do. We're all in this together. Yeah. So it starts with that. Then the other piece is get yourself uncomfortable. Like, I think being uncomfortable is so important that my family actively embarrasses themselves in public as a challenge to each other. Yeah, like my one of my daughters went and like laid down in a restaurant. I was like bright red. I was dying. And then she turned the camera on me for my challenge. It was horrible. Laura, nobody noticed. Like, nobody paid attention. Nobody did anything, but
but you were mortified.
I was dying. Like, nobody does anything. This world, we have got to get uncomfortable. Our minds are screaming, stay in the line, stay in the line. But deep down, our heart is going, something ain't right here. Something ain't right. And we are called. And once you step into that light, it's amazing how many hands are reaching out. Like we talked about Elise Smith, Elise and Brad Smith. They connected me with their daughter, Devin. I love Devin. Devin, she had me on her podcast.
I was gonna say, she has her own podcast, which is fantastic.
She is, It's All Magic. And she is visiting Thailand right now. And the Smiths actually came over right before she left. Their whole family came over to visit our farm and hung out. Like, you're just like, I'm like, wait a second. Somebody who's on the Amazon board, Facebook's board, is at my house. Mm-hmm. And like 10 years ago, would that have even been a pipe dream as I was in LA looking at the internet or whatever? Like, no. And so it's amazing. People want to help us. People see it. And that's why if we quit calling them the enemies, like there's days with pharmaceutical companies, I get really frustrated. And my husband helps me to see, like, Shannon, that's our current system. Our current system incentivizes profits above all else. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that, it's going to be harder for you to solve this problem. And so I say, hear yourself, reach out, get uncomfortable, and then pause and slow down when you catch yourself calling people the enemy versus looking at the problem.
Yeah, really looking at the problem and then figuring out, okay, let's just figure out how we fix it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You are beautiful and wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this today. Are you game for a little lightning round action here?
Whatever you got for me, bring it on.
Okay, so here we go. It's 60 seconds to answer open-ended questions about you, and your timer starts now. What season best fits your personality?
Spring.
What's your most used emoji in text?
I'd say the red heart.
Okay. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life? This is a toughie.
God, so freaking many. I would say The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's a study of stoicism. Has been incredibly impactful.
That's a good one. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
I think that people expect me to be maybe a lot more organized or a lot more like I have all my stuff together at home. I don't barely cook. Like, my kids are pretty good at cooking because I don't. And so it's my outsourcing of my personal life to be able to show up as I do.
I love it. Okay. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on.
Oh gosh. I really don't think there's anything. I am so strategic about my finances, and I'm very intentional about where my ones and zeros go. So I really don't like, there's never a too much. If I did, I would calculate and recalibrate.
I love it. I love it. That discipline. I need more of that discipline in my life. Oh, thank you so much again for doing this. You are amazing, and I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to see where you go, and especially after you go on your trip.
Well, girlfriend, we're going together, right? Like, wherever it is, we know we got each other's back. So just keep showing up in the world and speaking our truth, and knowing there's going to be pushback and there is going to be fire at us. And that's why I applaud anyone in the public space, because just everyone's not going to get you.
Yes.
And all we can know is the intention in our heart, and try to keep our close-knit close, to keep showing up. And you are beautiful inside and out. And I look forward to continuing to see where we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.